Hey everyone, it's Mark Fitzgerald here from the Fundamental Escape podcast, and I've got an amazing conversation to share with you all today. This is a conversation with Lucas Choate, who is a street epistemologist and a really amazing guy. We had an incredible conversation this evening, and I did record it. I have to be honest, I did record it unbeknownst to the people in the conversation. I did let them know at the end of the conversation that I did record it. One of the people in the conversation admittedly wasn't overly excited about the fact that I had recorded it. I did say to them that I would cut out everything that they said, which I have done. Lucas, on the other hand, was more than happy for the conversation to be presented, so I'm really happy about that. Obviously, if he had said no, I wouldn't be giving it to you now to listen to. I'm really excited that he did let me share this with you all, because it was such an incredible conversation. Lucas is a very honest, upfront person. He doesn't hide anything about what he's doing, and it was just really refreshing for me to have a conversation with somebody who is involved with street epistemology. It's kind of been on my wish list for the last month or two, actually. No one else wanted to talk to me, or so it seemed. I'm learning very quickly that you can't label and group people together. Everyone is different, and Lucas was more than obliging to be a part of the conversation and to share his thoughts. And he shared some, real honest things about his story and his background and some of the shifts in belief that he's gone through. And it's just amazing, and it was a very human conversation. It was very human moments that just really blew me away. And just listening back to it myself, some of the things I found myself saying I was challenged by as well, to be honest. I sometimes think, man, I think I'm talking to myself more than I'm trying to change other people, and I actually listen to my own words as well. But Lucas definitely challenged me, I have to say, and definitely gave me some insights into the whole sort of atheist community, and to listen to someone as to where they're coming from, and to realize that we're all human and we all bleed and we all have emotions, as I sort of said in the conversation. So I'm real happy to share this with you. I'm hoping to speak to Lucas again at some point. In an environment where we're both aware that we're being recorded from the beginning, obviously. But I think it was quite an amazing conversation. And like I say, just wanted to put that full disclosure out, because I don't want to hide anything at all. Please enjoy the conversation, and give us your feedback. Thanks so much. I was just going to say, there's two kinds of issues going on. I think there's the one question of how we can know what we know, but the question that's more important to me is, do we actually want to know? Because I think that a lot of these conversations, and this is half my issue with a lot of these back and forth dialogues, is you're talking to two people who seem to be open-minded and seem to just be going, oh, give me the answers, I just want to know, tell me how I can know, but they really don't actually want to know. I'm speaking from my own experience. Like, I have biases. I have things like inconvenient truths that I don't want to face up to. I completely admit that. I guess I can only speak for myself at the end of the day. I don't mean to be accusatory. I'm just saying I know there's certain things that I don't want to know are true. The things that there's things that you go, oh, if I knew this was true, if I had to face up to it, then I have to follow, my life has to change. There's actions.
You say?
I said there is more progressive theology out there now that's beyond turn or burn.
Yeah. I also have a problem with the idea of heaven, to be honest. My wife, by the way, was an evangelical Christian when we met.
You sorted that out, did you?
Yeah, we did. And believe it or not, she's still a theist. But anywho, our discussions have been on the subject of heaven. If I die and I go to heaven, then supposedly I live in God's light and I'm eternally happy forever, I guess. But I have a problem with that. The problem that I have with that is many of my best friends, a few of my family members that I love dearly, would not end up in heaven.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like I could go to heaven and live happily if I knew that that really bad version of hell is true.
Oh, absolutely.
Where
I can totally resonate with that. I've had exactly the same feelings. My
yeah,
dad's not a Christian. I'm like, I mean, as I said, I was a street preacher for 5 years, and I dogmatically preached this idea, and I got to a point where I was like, I felt exactly the same as what you just articulated. I was like, I'm supposed to be happy in heaven knowing that the rest of my family are burning. Like, how does that work?
right.
That doesn't
And
work.
so
I completely. You know what's funny actually, because I mean I completely agree with you on that point, and I'm genuinely at this point where I'm trying to understand. I mean you kind of put a theory out just before, and I think I just throwing out my own sort of theory, I guess, but my sort of idea, I guess. I think a lot of this impulse and this drive, this move towards atheism, because a lot of it, in my experience, a lot of atheists I've connected with have had some kind of evangelical or Christian experience, or not all, obviously, but a fair chunk of it is. And I think in some cases, not all, but I think in some cases it's a reactionary move because people are so tired of the dogmatism of religion. They're so tired of this turn or burn bullshit, and they're being told all this crap. And there's something in us, if I can just finish the point quickly,
Sure.
where human beings, for whatever reason, have this propensity, this drive to the mysterious, to the unknown. We don't want necessarily, we want truth, I think, but we don't want all the answers laid out for us. We want the experience. We want the process. And again, I'm talking from my own experience. I grew up in a world where I was handed all the answers. I was like, here's a Bible, Mark. It's heaven or hell, blah, blah, blah. The whole deal. So there's something in us, I think, that push. I mean, why do we get drawn to movies that have adventure stories and heroes and villains? And we like the journey, we like the process, right? We like the exploration, and I think a lot of the reaction, in many ways, is people going, "No, I don't want to be handed all the answers. I don't want it all laid out for me like this. I want to figure this shit out myself. I want to ask questions. I want to push back." But I think that, and this, this is where I might get offensive, but I think the overreaction with atheism is in its absolute deconstruction and focus on pulling apart religion. As I said to you, I think in that email today, that kind of cliche saying that you become what you behold, and you end up mirroring and emulating the very thing that you're trying to move away from. And I think that's just how I kind of see it, because you end up being just as dogmatic as a religious person.
So I think what I was asking you about earlier in the email, Mark, is let's just for the sake of argument, let's say that I agreed that atheists were, quote, dogmatic, and that we had someone to follow or a dogma to preach or whatever. I guess I don't know how to say this any different way, so I'll just say it. So what?
So what?
Yeah, like what?
Well,
what do
you mean? So what? You end up being just as religious as religion. What does that do for you?
Well, I'm religious. I understand what you're saying, but I'm religious about Linux in that way. Like, there are people I follow. If you ask me what operating system to install on my servers, I have an opinion on that.
Yeah,
I am religious in that way, but it doesn't affect the afterlife for me.
Yeah, I think, and again, when it comes to things like afterlife, I mean, nobody has died and come back. I mean, nobody ultimately knows. We're talking speculation. I think, here's what I think. I think human beings, for whatever reason, are very tribalistic and very, we form ourselves into groups, and we generally typically gather around people that think like us, have the same opinions and ideas. We don't, as much as we would hate to admit it, I think for the most part, we don't really like being challenged. We don't like being taken out of our comfort zone, and we don't like truth that causes us to have to shift our belief or our actions, for that matter. I mean, I think of things like charity when you think of, different things that are going on in the world, like human trafficking and slavery and all this kind of stuff, that we would just go, oh, I'd rather just put my head in the sand and pretend this isn't real because I don't want to face this inconvenient reality. So this notion that, I know the whole, and again, the whole sort of street epistemology idea of this, we're not pushing any idea, we're just asking questions. I'm like, well, no, you're not explicitly asking, or sorry, you're not explicitly pushing ideas, but you've got underlying biases that you may or may not be admitting to even yourself, because I think, we delude ourselves half the time. But I don't know. I don't think human beings are half as rational as we'd like to believe, to be honest with you. Most people but put it this way, most people that have to tell you they're open-minded usually aren't.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I get that. I know what you mean. And I think you're right, but I think that everyone does have their bias, and frankly, everyone should be allowed to be biased.
Oh, I mean, it's unavoidable. You have to.
Yeah,
if
it
you
is
have
unavoidable.
bias, you're not a person. You're not, and this is the whole thing, isn't it? Because if you go from that humanistic, like material atheistic viewpoint, we're just a bunch of atoms flying around bumping into each other for about 70 odd years, and then whatever, we change into a different form. Like, there's no basis. And again, to be clear, I'm not making the whole dogmatic, you can't be good without religion, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying, the basis for saying something is good or kind or compassionate just has no grounding. There's no grounding whatsoever. Because we're just a bunch of atoms flying around. There's no but yet we have this deep sense of compassion, of this idea that there's more of this, not more, sorry, that this idea that we should treat people a certain way, that people deserve dignity and respect and honor, and where do these concepts come from? Forgiveness, where did that emerge?
Don't you think that just being an empathetic, conscious human being, or other social animal, by the way, explains that?
Yeah.
But okay, so I think I understand what you're saying, but how do you feel about like, if we look in the quote animal world? I mean, I believe that we're just animals, us crazy people. But if we look, if we look at other species besides ourselves, we find them being compassionate and caring and sharing and
absolutely
not stealing from each other. They are altruistic. These are the traits of a social animal. It doesn't mean that.
See, the thing that's more fascinating to me is not where do the answers come from, but where do the questions come from? Why do we have these questions? Why are we a species, or if you will, whatever we are, animals ultimately, I guess I'm not disagreeing with that. But why do we have these self-reflecting questions? Why do we, I've heard these sort of idea put out, like when a bee is born, a bee doesn't go, oh, what am I going to do with my life? It's like instinct. It just runs on instinct. And I think that's the one fundamental difference between a human being and an animal, and, just an instinctive animal like that, is we have this crisis of, like, midlife crisis or whatever, going, what am I doing with my life? And the self-reflecting and asking questions. And the thing is, I just, that to me is what I find more fascinating, is the questions. And why do we ask the questions we ask? Why is this conversation, even for you, someone who, adamantly, well, I don't know if you say you don't believe in God, that's fine, whatever. Why is this conversation clearly this conversation's of interest to you based on what I'm seeing. And I'm just like, why? Sure. Why is this conversation fascinating? Why do we have these questions, even if we do or don't believe?
Well, why do we have these questions? I don't know if I have an answer to that.
And I find that incredibly fascinating.
I think Mike, kind of nailed it before. and you nailed it too. We like the journey. We like to know. We like to learn.
Yeah, and I think that's the pushback. I think that's where I can go with atheism. I mean, I can agree with a lot of atheism in a lot of what it's doing and saying, because I'm someone that grew up in the church all my life. I grew up in a completely Christian bubble. I had no chance of thinking any other way, and I had to go through a lot of different experiences, some very painful, to go. And this is again my sort of pushback on this whole street epistemology thing, if I can go there a little bit, because I'm just I fundamentally question the premise that it takes, that this whole concept of belief is this scale where you can say to someone, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe? It's well, I don't know. I don't even know where this belief came from. I mean, I spoke to someone on my podcast earlier this year who said, we live with our beliefs more than we choose them, It's not just this logical binary toggle on-off switch. Belief doesn't work like that at all. And I think, the whole sort of premise of this street epistemology phenomena, as I call it, because it is, a growing thing, absolutely, undeniably, is built on this premise that belief is something that you just simply choose. And I don't think it works like that at all.
I don't think anybody who is doing SE believes that you choose your beliefs. I don't think they
believe that either.
And I think that's the point of it, is that most people have not thought about why they believe what they believe. And the point is, if you have evidence that is sufficient to justify your belief, in other words, you have a good epistemic philosophy, you have good epistemology, then fine. Great.
Here's what I would say to that is, for me personally, as I said, I've swam in the waters of theology all my life. Of, do you believe in God? Don't you believe in God? I don't care. To me, I don't wake up in the morning going, I believe in God today. I don't think like that. I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm just at this point in my life, I still use the title Christian. I don't know sometimes why I continue to do that, because most Christian people I grow up with don't think I am a Christian anymore, because I'm not theological enough for them. But it's... I mean, when I look at Jesus, for example, I was just saying this to a friend last night. I look at the life of Jesus and his teaching, and, these stories and parables and these sort of, that's to me the beauty of a parable, is a story that gets under your skin. It's not like a logical, dogmatic proposition of truth, of theological, insight to go, here, do you accept this or reject this? It's like this kind of subversive story that kind of challenges you and gets, that's why we like art and storytelling, like I was saying before, with movies and things, and I think, for me, I don't go, oh, I believe in God today. I just go, for whatever reason, I find myself compelled by these ideas, by this person called Jesus, if you will. To me, the question of, do I have enough sufficient evidence to base my life on that? That's not even a compelling idea to me. That's not even a compelling component of the argument.
It's not. Well, that's interesting. I don't know what to make of that.
Good, because I don't want you to put me in a box, and I don't want to put you in a box, because that's, I'll be honest with you. As soon as, we start interacting, this is the human tendency, isn't it? As soon as you label somebody, you can dehumanize them and you can write them off, and I can go, oh, here's Lucas, he's just a street epistemologist, I know what he's all about, blah, 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 blah. And I can just put you in a box and just ultimately dehumanize you, and you can ultimately do the same to me if you want. But I think there's something in us that says, no, I don't want to do that, because I think the moment you dehumanize another, I think you start to lose the humanity of yourself.
Well, I get your meaning, and I understand what you're saying, but I mean, maybe many other people would do that. Maybe everybody else would do that, but I know that I guess on that point, I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
If somebody,
my general feeling, if I can say this to throw some small spanners in the works, but when I watch, to be honest with you, I struggle to watch these street epistemology videos, and I've shared that feeling with Anthony on Twitter, but I struggle to watch them because what I see is somebody approaching somebody else and simply trying to one-up them. That's what it comes across like to me.
What do you mean by one up?
Just to condescend and to tell them they're wrong. That's all I see.
Do you think that you are giving that a fair shake?
Well, I'm saying it to put context around it. I mean, I'm saying it as somebody who was a street preacher for 5 years, so I do know what proselytizing looks like. You know, I feel like I have some grounding to speak on this kind of thing. So, and we did discuss today, you know, I'm not saying that street preaching and street epistemology are the same thing. I think they're fundamentally not the same thing. I think that, what I recognize in street epistemology that is similar to what I used to do is basically the idea of listening to someone to the point where they stop talking and you can just basically tell them or get to the point that you want to get to. That's what I see.
I just want to make the point that, you know, I think it definitely comes down to the specific instance that you are talking about, because I know that having watched all of Anthony's videos that he approaches each of his interlocutors in a different way. And the ones that he has spoken to before.
What did you say?
Can you hear me?
What was that word you said? Interlocutors.
Yeah, interlocutor. Your conversation partner.
What? See, even that just baffles me. Why do you need a word like that? That's crazy to me.
Because all this is it's a Socratic. It's a Socratic dialogue. You're familiar with Socrates.
I know. Well, yeah, I know enough. I mean, look.
Okay. So let me help you with the basics of this. Socrates wasn't about telling you when he was talking about philosophy. He wasn't about telling you what was right or what was wrong. He was about asking you questions and letting you come to your own understanding of it. And those, and we use those words, I think, basically as a reminder that is what we are doing. This is a dialogue. It's not street preaching. And like when you showed me your video today, your video was, with all due respect, it was a setup to get someone.
Of course it was. I'm not even. That's not an insult. That was meant to be.
Okay. Well,
that's what I was doing. I had a message to share.
Yes, exactly. And the difference between what a street epistemologist does and what a street preacher does is we don't tell you that you're wrong. We ask you why. And you will hear over and over and over again, and that's why I asked you if you thought you were giving this a fair shake, because if the answer is you are completely satisfied with your evidence, then great. Then what have I got to say about that? And you'll never hear Anthony or anyone else that is sort of in this movement say, oh, Mark, you're just wrong. You shouldn't believe in that, and it's stupid, and here's why. And you're stupid too.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing is, you won't see that, and I think, and I talked about this as well, that I think I think this whole street epistemology thing is, to me, I think it's a reactionary type move in the face of a movement of atheism that is sick and tired of being labeled as militant and angry. And so I think it's kind of switched tactics, and not to sound too offensive, but it almost has become passive aggressive, where it's like It's not attacking. It's not telling people they're wrong. It's just asking questions. You know, what do you believe? It's very airy-fairy, and it's very. I really want to know. Well, do you really want to know, or are you just waiting to basically not tell me I'm wrong, but let me tell myself through a bunch of questions? You can share a message with someone explicitly through making points. You can also share a message implicitly through questions. So don't sit there and say that it's not about, there's no content to what you're doing. There's absolutely content to what you're doing. You're not saying believe A, B, and C, but you can't say your questions are void of content.
No, yeah, and I wouldn't. But the point is that this is just a technique to understand and to point out the flaws in someone's epistemology.
I like you being honest there, because there's some content in what you just said. It's to tell someone they're wrong. That's basically what you just said.
Yeah, if they are.
Which 99.9% of the time, unless you come across another street epistemologist, you're going to have the fundamental premise that they're wrong.
No.
Be clearer. I'm not against asking questions. I'm not against being challenged about what people believe. What I find frustrating and infuriating, and this is why I am speaking out against it on YouTube and things, is because it seems like no one else really is. But also the fact that it's what annoys me about it is the pretension of pretending to be open-minded and concerned and wanting to know the truth, and not actually wanting to know. That's what it's like. Oh, tell me what you believe. Why do you believe in God? It's like you don't care. You don't want to know.
Well, that's not true. And let me show you why. Remember, I said that using the techniques of street epistemology on theism is exactly the same as it is on a Bigfoot belief. If somebody says that they believe in Bigfoot and I ask them, why do you believe that? And the answer is, well, I saw this great documentary on unsolved mysteries where they showed all these great movies, home movies of Bigfoot running across the forest. Okay, I'm sorry, but that is not a good reason to believe it. But if what you are telling me is that you were on a 3-day hike through the deep forest and you yourself saw Bigfoot, I really do want to know that. If you were abducted by aliens, tell me.
Look, absolutely. I completely agree with that on the surface, if that's what it was. But I don't believe that's what it is. You could say, for example, you talk about experience. I mean, what about these people that say to you, I've seen them say to Anthony, I've experienced God, I've had an experience, I've, changed my life, this, that. You don't have any remote level of open-mindedness to go, well, what if it's true? What if I'm not even arguing it is, by the way.
Yeah, and so, on the subject of theism, yeah, there is a reason that we want to be out there talking to people who have a bad epistemology, that believe in God because their parents gave it to them and they've never thought about it. They don't have any personal connection with it other than they just want to believe because it's their right to believe, and why wouldn't I believe? And, the panoply of reasons that people give to believe in God that are completely unjustified.
Unjustified based on what? That's my question. So what would suffice as evidence for God's existence to you? There's just, I think what street epistemology does, it's very simplistic and it's very oversimplistic, and it reduces something as complex as belief to something on a scale that you kind of range yourself on, and it just frankly doesn't. The concept of a belief scale, the trust that that's even a thing, is a belief, and that's what I find quite ironic. Don't look at when I'm saying reason. I would say things along the lines of how you actually conduct your life and how you live and how you treat people and how you forgive your enemy and how you display yourself. Okay, when I look at okay, taking the Gospels, taking Jesus' life and the way he taught his disciples, and, as I say, told parables and subversive stories, and he didn't just hand them a systematic theology and a bunch of propositional truth. As I've heard it well said, I don't believe anybody has been converted at the end of an argument. And this is where I think, and this is where, to be honest, to speak a little bit of favour towards street epistemology, I think it's a better alternative in some ways to what has been, which is just going, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. Of course, it's a step up. You're right, there is fear involved. There is, there's all kinds of things. And again, that's where I can empathise in many ways. And that's where I think that ironically, I think atheism can serve a very compassionate and kind purpose, in the sense that it does create a space for people that have been kicked to the edges from religion and told that they're wrong and told that they're not to ask those questions and blah blah blah. I get all that. With the whole does God exist question, I mean, I don't find that question incredibly compelling, to be honest, because I've grown up. To me, I admit I'm self-aware enough to know that I've been conditioned to believe in God regardless of any evidence or lack thereof. I admit that. I've grown up in a world of theism. I've grown up where all my friends were Christian, all my family, well, most of my family I grew up with were Christian. God existed whether you accepted that or not, and there were no two ways about it. So to me, the idea of having to give reason for that, I'm just like, in my head, I still go to that place. Maybe it's like a neural pathway thing in your brain where you just go, of course there's a God. Are you stupid? Like, what the heck, and I know that it doesn't go down well. But, I mean, to me, for many reasons, it is quite clear. I mean, I think one concept that fascinates me lately is the idea of biomimicry, which I've been, sort of looking into, where you've got, the things like, I found one example of, I did a blog about it actually, with the bullet train in Japan, where it's basically the design of the nose of the bullet train is basically mimicked from the beak of a hummingbird, essentially. And I'm just like, well, okay, so this one biological reality is random, but when you imitate it or when you mimic it, it's called technology and it's a design. I mean, I don't, if you copy something that's random and call it a design, that just doesn't wash with me. I'm just like,
that's just this understanding of what the idea of randomness.
Look, I'll put my hand up and say I'm completely ignorant when it comes to anything remotely to do with evolution, because I didn't swim in those waters. I have no idea. I've never,
I mean, I think it helps to have an understanding of those kinds of things if you are going to, if you're wondering about it. That's the kind of thing that makes me want to go out and look, and that's why I'm on this blab, and that's why I blog, and that's why I'm on Facebook all the time, and that's why I'm on Twitter all the time arguing with people, because
see, but that's I don't get it. Why are atheists why are they so militant? I don't understand it. Why
I will tell you why. Well, I tried to explain it to you in the email today, and I think being from New Zealand, you said, you don't deal with this reality, but you probably can understand it. The theistic world impacts my life on a daily basis. My son,
I can appreciate that.
Who I want to raise in a very secular manner. I want him to be respectful. I want my kids to be respectful of religion, and to understand that people, should be allowed to be religious and believe in whatever they want to. I don't want him being forced to believe in God, and every single day at school he has to pledge allegiance to that God.
I think at some point there's got to be a third way. And what I mean by that is this. There's got to be a point where we move beyond this, you're right, you're wrong, this back and forth, and this is what, I know atheists cop it all the time, like, you've got no basis for morality, blah, 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 blah. It's ridiculous. It's offensive. I find that offensive when I hear people saying that, And I think it comes down to this tribalistic sort of thing where I would love to see a world where, and I know I'd get crucified by, conservative Christians for saying this, but where we can get beyond the labels and go, you know what, I actually don't care if you are a Christian or not a Christian, whatever. It's like, I see an impulse in you as a human being to want to live in a better way and to want to make better choices. And you're talking about being a father and your kids, and that's a huge thing. I'm not I'm a single dude that's, I've got no kids or anything. But when I hear you as a father talk about those things, I'm like, I can't argue with you on that. I don't stand a chance because I'm dealing with an impulse that goes so far beyond logic and reason. This thing we call love, I guess you could say, that runs deeper than anything. And I think that, and again, I mean, to be honest, I just closed down I had a Twitter account that I was kind of using for the last week to kind of have a bit of fun and do some trolling. And, I like to provoke, I just shut it down today because I was like, I don't like where this is going. But I am interested, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation, Lucas, because it's really, honestly, it's really refreshing to me to see you and to talk to you as a real person and go, I don't want to just see you as this concept of like, oh, here's this guy, he does this thing called street epistemology and blah, blah, blah. And I just know these vague facts about you, and I'm just like, do you know what I mean? Like, to hear you talk about being a dad and caring about your kids, I'm just like, oh, crap, I can't write you off now because I've humanized you too much,
Yeah.
And I think, look, I had some sort of back and forth with Anthony on Twitter, and I mean, Peter Boghossian blocked me on Twitter for trolling, basically, probably rightly so. But again, I mean, in the best way I knew how, because I got to the point where I was like, these people don't want to talk to me. What's going on? And so I kind of got frustrated and just started being a troll, I guess. But to have this opportunity to go, this is a lifeline to me to be able to talk to you, because I'm like, I don't want to do this dehumanizing of atheists or anyone who doesn't see the world the way I do. And I would hope that you don't either, that we can go, is there a third way? Can we get past this? Like, is the do you believe in God question the most important thing at the end of the day? Or is it how you live in the world? How you treat your neighbors, how you forgive your enemies, how you show compassion, kindness. I mean, I heard, like, going back a couple of years, I remember listening to a talk that Sam Harris gave. I think it was around the time he wrote a book to do with free will. He was talking about free will and all that kind of stuff. And I found it incredibly compelling, some of the stuff he was saying. I was like, this guy has an ocean of compassion right now. Like, you know what I mean? I was just like, there's something incredible. I was just like...
Yeah.
And I want to be the kind of person that affirms that wherever I see it, I don't want to go, oh, you don't believe in God, you got nothing to say to me. I'm just like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy to me. And I would hope that can go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, I think you probably heard this, but when I married my wife, she was an evangelical Christian. So I don't write people off based on their religious beliefs or lack thereof. It isn't important, except for in the case where people are so concerned. Here's my issue fundamentally with religion in general of all kinds. It's not Christianity. It's not any other particular religion that is troublesome to me. The problem with religion is the religion. The fact that if I am so concerned about what's going to happen when I die, that I am making bad decisions today, that's an untenable situation. For example, like when a Sandy Hook happens, instead of going out into the parking lot and having a prayer circle, what we need to do is go into the lunchroom and have a discussion about how we don't let freaks get guns anymore.
Lucas, I can say, honestly, I can go with you on pretty much everything you just said. And I think what you're touching on is something that I've had to come to a point in my own life where it's growing up in a world essentially where reality is something that happens after you die, and this life is just a waiting room, and it's this disengaged, disconnected existence, right? I think that's kind of what you're hitting on, and I can totally go with you on that because I grew up in that world too, and it's horrible. I've had to learn, I'm 33 years old right now, and I feel like I'm just getting to a point where I'm starting to be able to make my own choices and have an opinion and think for myself, So I can totally go with you on that. And I think, to flippantly say, oh, let's just pray about it, whatever, to be so disengaged that you don't want to take action and you don't want to, to sort of, but I think both sides kind of cut themselves off at the knees when we sort of get hung up on these arguments instead of going, how now shall we live kind of thing. We're just like, how do we just keep pushing forward and keep pushing past the whole does God exist question to go, well, is this something we're ever going to find out? We only get this one shot on the planet, right? Like, let's make it as best as, good as possible, sort of thing.
So I really agree with that very much. And that's frankly why I don't understand why people have such a hard time with SE, Street Epistemology, because what is a better alternative? Would it be better to say, hey, do you have 5 minutes so I can tell you what an idiot you are to believe in a God?
Well, yeah.
Isn't it better to ask the questions and to interact in a way that is positive and enjoyable, and if nothing else, gets the message out that an atheist can be a moral, kind, concerned, and loving member of society, and that I don't have to treat you like dirt to disagree. Because we know talking about apologetics, that's the beauty of having what I would consider, very shaky foundation of a belief is that if my belief is unfalsifiable, how are you going to argue with it?
You know what? Can I just say, and this might throw the conversation a little bit left field, but as someone who was a street preacher myself, for 5 years, like I said, I think that this is what I find fascinating, Lucas, is someone like yourself having the impulse to do this whole street epistemology thing, because I think, is this questioning of other people, like, it seems clear to me in this conversation that you are a person that's curious and does have questions, which is, not something I kind of asserted at the beginning, but I can see that, and I'm just like, is this more about what's going on internally for yourself than anything else? Because why, like, this kind of impulse to go on this journey to, the sort of, this whole impulse to go out and even have the desire to talk to other people about what they believe, that's not normal. This desire, because I found, for me, I think it was like in the last sort of year of doing street epistemology, street evangelism, where I got to a point where I actually started listening to other people, and I actually started humanizing other people instead of going, I've got this thing to tell you. And I think, when I think about it now, I think subconsciously towards the end, it almost was as though I was doing street epistemology, because I did start listening to other people. And I did start hearing what they had to say, and I was like, "Whoa, what do you believe?" And I was genuinely interested. So I think I probably have a little bit more authority to speak on this than I think, because I think I was almost doing that towards the end. And I find it I get drawn to people that are curious, and I think it's interesting to me that you are this curious person that wants to explore and wants to challenge. But the thing is, I think, that I would just be interested to know from your life experience how, if you think of the major shifts, because I'm no doubt, assuming there have been some major shifts in your beliefs, when they come in your life, where does that come from? Is it coming from, a conversation some random person had with you, or was it through pain or suffering or something incredibly challenging? What's caused the biggest shifts in your belief, if I can ask that explicitly?
I don't really know. My story is that I grew up with religious parents. My parents were Episcopalian, sort of, and they would take me to church on occasion, and I would go, and it all seemed very big and impressive, and didn't seem to have anything to do with me. So I very much, so forever and ever, I called myself an agnostic until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when I started realizing, oh, wait a minute, I'm more than agnostic. I'm actually an agnostic atheist because I don't believe there's a God.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of major shifts in my worldview, I have had them. And I don't know if I could tell you what caused them, but I used to be extremely patriotic. I like if this country could do no wrong. Uh, I was, gun rights at all costs. I wanted to vote for John McCain. I
This
was,
is so interesting.
yeah, right.
This is
And
so
so
interesting to me.
yeah, and this is like in the early '90s, around the first Gulf War. And I would tell my friends, and we would all joke. I remember smoking cigarettes in the parking lot, talking shit about Chevys and Fords, and saying I'd fly 1,000 miles to smoke a Camel. Meaning that we wanted to, join the war and go blow holes in towel heads and stuff. And then I really don't know what happened. I think what happened is that I woke up and I started looking around and realizing that, oh my God, I'm so wrong. And
isn't that such a beautiful feeling?
it is a beautiful feeling. And and during all that time, I have always been willing and interested to talk to people about religion and about their religion. And I used to work with these great people in the computer room at Boeing, and they were the tape librarian, one of my favorite people in the world, Olivia Berry. I'll never forget her. But she was this big black woman, and when I would show up, she would come out of her tape library, and she'd be like, "Oh, there's Lucas. He's a seeker. But the big booming voice, and she really believed that I was going to find God any minute, and it's been like 15 years since that.
I'm so blown away right now. I'm just blown away by how much I'm resonating with what you're saying right now, and it's just incredible. It's incredible. Like, it's a very human moment right now, if I can just say that, because I'm like, at the end of the day, what we choose to believe or not believe about certain things, it's like, we all bleed, right? We all have these emotions, these feelings, and it's like what you're talking about now is very human, and it's fascinating to see. And there's a quote, I can't remember who said it. I've heard someone quoting, there was someone who basically said, it's always interesting to hear why people believe what they believe. It's always fascinating to hear the story behind people's, where they are. And I think that's half the problem, I think, from both theism and atheism, is it just deals on the surface level. It doesn't... We have these nice, neat categories, and I'm sure you can go with me on this, We have these nice, neat categories where we can go, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, these are the smart people, these are the idiots, whatever. And we form these tribes, and we just dehumanize one another, and we go, cool, and we feel better about ourselves, and we walk away. And this is, I don't want to sound too dramatic here, but this is one of the most incredible conversations I've ever had in my life right now. I'm just like completely blown away. And I'm so grateful that you're being as honest as you are. It's incredible,
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I do like to talk to people, and frankly, I'm just not sophisticated enough not to be on the level. Like when you asked, is my interest in street epistemology as much for me as it is the movement? I'm sort of paraphrasing. The answer is yeah. I mean, because if somebody can explain to me in a way that is clear to me why they believe this very important thing. I mean, I consider it to be very important. Someone like Mike is very good at explaining and defending his beliefs. And that is, that is interesting to see.
Mm.
Someone like the other Mark who was here, maybe not so good. But
Yeah.
but anyway, I really do want to know if it's true, because I really want to believe true things. I don't want to let my ego or my bias or those kinds of things get in the way of me understanding or having a good picture of reality. I really want to know what is reality.
You know what's funny is I think this human impulse that seems to be in all of us to try and like crack the code of the other person. It's like we fundamentally see human beings as these mysterious, I don't know what to say, creatures. I don't know. We just sort of want to get inside, behind the curtain, and it's interesting. And I think not to get too deep or philosophical, but I think in my own experience sometimes it's easier to try and probe other people and to confront other people on what they believe, because we don't want to face up to our own darkness and our own weakness and unknownness. And it's always easier, it seems to me, that it's always easier to try and fix other people than to confront things in ourselves. Oh, heaven forbid a world without atheists. Too many. If everyone was there, it would be terrible. We need some resistance.
Well, I think probably the best thing to do is just keep talking, and let's just keep asking questions, and let's see if we can identify at least where we are talking past each other. Maybe that's not the problem at all. I mean, if what we're saying is that I just fundamentally don't see the angle from which you are coming, that may be the case, and I don't know what we would do about it.